I want to start by thanking you for inviting Success to be part of the conversation today. I would also like to acknowledge that I am joining from the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Solo, Chunamis, Tsawwassen, and Musqueam First Nations. I want to express gratitude and honor the Indigenous peoples who are the keepers of these lands that have existed since time immemorial. I think it's important to start by recognizing that anti-Asian racism, it's not something that's new, that just sort of started during the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been a long history of racism against Asian communities across Canada. For example, the Chinese head tax, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the internment of Japanese people. These are just some of, a few examples. I think many of us might not be very familiar with, this long history of racism in Canada, including myself, right? So I would encourage everyone to take some time to continue, this learning, right? To learn about this history. So even pre-COVID, we regularly heard stories about how people in the community were experiencing hate and discrimination. So this was before, January 2020, this was happening already. What's happening now is sort of a continuation of this. An Insights West survey from last month, so April, I found that 77% of Asian British Columbians have experienced racist comments, discrimination at work or school, physical assault, or property damage since living in BC. 77%, like that's an astonishing and shocking number, but also at the same time, not really a surprise for the people who live this experience every day, right? Like we know this is true. And we know that the actual number is probably much higher because a lot of people, probably underreport. A lot of the hate that's been directed at Asian communities, it's also rooted in the intersections of like racism, xenophobia, classism, and misogyny. At Success, we've heard numerous stories of people in the community who feel unwelcome and just unsafe. They're apprehensive about leaving their homes, and they're exhausted of having to be sort of on alert all the time and be prepared for something that could happen, even if that means you're just walking down a couple of blocks to go grocery shopping, or you're taking transit to work because you're an essential worker, right? And it's not just fear for themselves, it's having this fear for what might happen to their elders, their kids, other family members, their friends, their neighbors. Another thing that we've heard is that a lot of people are not just fearful of being like on the receiving end of an attack, but also, the thing that probably is even more sort of alarming is that they're scared that no one's going to help them if something happens, right? That other people will just stay silent, that they're going to ignore the situation or pretend they didn't see it. Or that if they go through the process of trying to report it, that no one will believe them, or that it'll be downplayed because there wasn't a witness, or there wasn't somebody with an iPhone capturing the incident that occurred. And for many newcomers that we work with who might have lower levels of English proficiency, many also fear that they're going to be taken less seriously because they're not able to articulate in English what happened, right? So they're afraid that, oh, nobody's going to take me seriously. So, what's the point of reporting, right? And like, if you think about this, all this adds up, and it's a lot of ongoing anxiety. It's a lot of stress, trauma, and grief. And there's been a lot of impacts on people's mental health and well-being due to these constant feelings of like fear, exclusion, and isolation. People are traumatized by, both the pandemic and all these hate incidents that we hear about and experience, whether you're a receiver or a witness. At Success, we've seen a marked increase in people who've been reaching out to us for help, particularly our helpline services and our counseling services this past year. But at the same time, we know that there are a lot of people, especially newcomers, who are not reaching out for support because there's still a lot of stigma around, reaching out for mental health and wellness type supports as well. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we all know that we can try to protect ourselves from the virus by things like physical distancing, wearing a mask, staying local, getting vaccinated. but how do we protect ourselves against racism and hate, right? So we really need to build that, community of support and advocate and support each other, and build solidarity networks, because a lot of this needs to happen at the local community level. That's where we help each other out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amy. What you said was very interesting and meaningful. Actually, when my father immigrated to Canada from Egypt, he didn't have those support systems in place to help him with that transition. So what has success done really to help not only immigrants, but also the Chinese victims of racism, Asian victims of racism, especially in this during the pandemic year? What are the programs and services that you found were in demand and need and that you provided?
So at Success, we're kind of doing work on sort of two levels, right? So we're doing our best to support the community through our direct programs and services, as well as through our advocacy work. So we're really proud to convene the Resilience BC Anti-Racism Network in this spoke community of Tri-Cities. So that's, for them, people who might not be familiar, that's Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody. And the team there has been working with local partners to develop, community response protocols and support networks to people who are experiencing, racism and hate incidents. At the program level, we're also trying to scale up a lot of our key areas of work that support the mental wellness of people, right? So that, like I mentioned, our helpline services and our counseling services. We're also right now in the process of planning some community events and webinars around mental wellness and self-care, as well as sessions to support immigrant families. And our goal is to be able to offer these in different languages in order to meet, to be more accessible to different communities. As you mentioned a little earlier, we've been doing a lot of bystander trainings for the community for free, so that people can learn the tools to be active bystanders and intervene when they witness incidents in the community. So whether it's just like in your neighborhood, in a store, at a restaurant, at school, or at work. So late last year, sort of into earlier this year, we were able to do 4 of those sessions. This month, we've done 2 sessions already, one just this morning, and we have more planned. Our next one is going to be on June 23rd. And then after that, we're going to continue to roll these out in the community as well. Right now, they're all online, but we'll see, depending on the COVID situation, if we're able to, do in other formats as well. We're also working to offer a series specifically for frontline social service workers so that they can learn how to incorporate some of these tools and information into as part of their client service delivery as well. So that's something we're working on. And then at the advocacy level, Success would continue to advocate for change at the systems level. So everything from, the ethical collection and use of race-based data, more sustainable and long-term funding on anti-racism initiatives, because we know that, we're not going to solve this in a 1-year short-term contract kind of project. Greater education, and awareness around historical and contemporary racism and the different forms that it takes, as well as policy changes to eliminate inequities, right? From the treatment of migrant workers to our foreign credential recognition system, to a better access to safe and affordable housing, and so much more. So at Success, we're going to continue to share with those who are in positions of power and influence what we're seeing and hearing from the community, and to push for those positive changes that are needed in all sectors. And one thing I do want to add, is that, I hope that this conversation and the work around anti-racism, it's ongoing, right? That, there isn't just this attention and awareness on it because, there's some new statistics that came out, or there was a major incident that was reported in the news for a few days, right? But that we care about this all the time, and that we have a long-term commitment to this work to create the changes, because we know that long-term work is what is going to be required. So thank you.